instead.
No work tomorrow. Huh?
No, it's a holiday.
Thursday. Friday's the holiday.
All right, Friday I don't have to work.
Okay.
Well, I'm working from home tomorrow, so and like half my teams are on vacation.
I'm also working from home tomorrow. I worked from home today too.
I can say the craziest thing did happen, not for the opening bit, because for the first time since they opened the pedestrian lane, today on my way home, I biked across the bridge and encountered 0 pedestrians.
Wow. Okay. It could just be timing or...
Yeah, but it's the first time it's ever happened.
Oh, yeah.
Yesterday...
Also, there are some people who just didn't figure it out right. They're,
Yeah. The people I see doing it who are like on the wrong side, I would say the majority of them are the kinds of people I would not approach anywhere where I encountered them. They are people who are clearly having a problem.
It's something I've been getting on lately about this certain class of Karen-ish passive-aggressive people who think the solution to everything is signs. They're like, complaining about off-leash dogs. They got to put up some signs. People on the wrong bike path. They got to put up some signs. And I'm like, bro, if signs worked, we would be living in a utopia where everyone behaves perfectly. It's like
we're one of the few countries where a stop sign has any effect.
Yeah, it's like...
But
signs don't, anyone who obeys signs doesn't usually need a sign to behave properly, right? You only need a sign to alert well-intentioned people of unexpected or non-obvious.
Though I did notice a subset of the people.
Hey, for example, yes, these unassuming rocks are radioactive. You need a sign.
Yep.
Right? Like that's what you need a sign for. You don't need a sign for.
This is a cliff that you can see. Don't walk off it.
Don't let your dog bite random strangers. It's like, a sign ain't gonna.
Yep. But I did witness
dog shit. It's.
I was biking and I just ignored it, but there was an old lady and she wasn't even just walking in the old pedestrian side of the bike lane. She was walking on the right side that was always bikes only. And I'm just biking, but someone else ahead of me stops and is like, hey, did you know you're like, he actually was very polite. He was like, hey, did you know this is and she starts screaming at him. Yep. But what she screamed was, there's no shade on the other side. But there wasn't shade where she was walking either. So I just gave that situation a wide berth. Anyway, let me get going.
Get a parasol, lady.
Yeah. It's Wednesday, July 2nd, 2025. I'm Rim.
I'm Scott.
And this is Geek Nights. Tonight we are reviewing The Wild Robots, directed by Chris Sanders. So, I finally did something I should have done a long time ago, and way back, I'll even link to it. One of the earlier episodes of Geek Nights that Scott and I did is when we learned how to shave like adults, and we bought safety razors and started shaving correctly, and it was like a revolution in terms of how much money it saved us. Like, for years, I remember I kept track of how much money I had saved buying these, like, 4-cent blades that last forever instead of, like, the Mach 3 I used to buy. And, like, my shaving was better. Like, everything was better. It was just fantastic. But I kind of just left it well enough alone from that point until now. Like, I haven't changed much other than I've stopped buying, like, the pre-foamed cream. I just use soap. I don't even use shaving soap. I just buy a random puck of soap, and I stick it in the cup, and I shave with that, and it's fine. When I travel, I don't even use soap anymore. I just use oil, like in the Greek and Roman style. And you know what? It's just as good to shave. It's really comfortable. But my razor... The original Merkur that I got way back in the day, the top bit had a little bit of corrosion on it because it's really old and it's like plated steel.
Take care of it. Mine's in perfect condition. What would you do?
I don't know. I travel with it a lot. It gets danged around a lot. So, but it was still usable. And you could just buy a replacement for that top bit and it's super cheap. So that's not a problem. But then I remembered a decision that I made a long time ago, because when you get a safety razor, the ones we both bought, and if you listen to that episode, I'm confident we talk about this, we basically bought the safest, easiest to use version of a safety razor. The one that has the least chance of cutting you, meaning it has a shallow blade angle and a closed comb. So I'm at the point where, like, honestly, sometimes if I'm in a hurry, I can just dry shave with this thing and I'm fine. Like, it doesn't actually cause a problem. So I tried, because I was at a hotel that had like fancy razors available if you wanted to just use them while you were there on a work trip. So I got an open comb safety razor, because that was the kind we didn't get, because you could cut yourself like more easily. It has a steeper.
I never really understood like it's just got holes in the thing.
It's
like,
a big difference. So one, it does get a much closer shave, because the blade the blade actually does get like tighter against your skin, and there's more gap there. It also, you can shave a very long swath without getting any hair stuck in it at all. And basically what I discovered using this thing is that if I had tried to use the open comb with a steeper blade angle when we were first learning, I probably would have cut myself. It is the right call to start with the easy safety razor. But once you get good at it, the open comb is it's like a whole different thing. It's the closest shave I've ever had, other than the handful of times I've gotten a straight razor shave from a professional, and I'm never going to bother using a straight razor.
Straight razor, then, and know, Rim's gonna come back like in 10 years and be like, "Yeah, I shave with a rusty."
I'm just using an axe blade.
Yeah, no, and not even no water.
I shave outside with a magnifying glass and the sun.
I rub my face on a tree.
But the reason I will never use a safety razor or a straight razor is that, yes, in the hands of a professional, it's like a baby's butt. Like, it is amazing how good that is, but that is in the hands of a professional who spends like 10 minutes shaving you very carefully. I am never going to do that to myself routinely, because even a slight mistake has dire consequences. With the open comb safety razor, I think that's about as deep a shave as I'm ever going to go for, because I would have to fuck up real bad to hurt myself with that thing, other than a minor nick. So yeah, it's a pretty good razor. One other little opening bit. I don't know how it happened. I think we were both distracted and neither one of us noticed. So yesterday, or 2 days ago, when we did Geek Nights, we just didn't talk about our things of the day. We went right into the meta moment and just kept going. And I didn't even, like, literally, I'm sitting there playing Overwatch, and in the middle of a match, I'm in like a duel. Like, I'm flying around shooting rockets at this guy, and this guy's trying to shoot me, and suddenly I think, we didn't fucking talk about the things of the day. Fuck! And I got distracted, and then I got shot. So,
all right, what were the things of the day?
So, my thing of the day yesterday was NHL refs mic'd up part 2. But the reason I made that my thing of the day... The reason I made this specific video my thing of the day is usually when there's X mic'd up, it's always like, here's the funny things that happened, or the crazy things, or someone said fuck, or like it's that kind of video. Unlike other refs mic'd up kinds of videos I've seen, this one seemed to just be long segments of the technical conversations that referees have amongst themselves and with the players, instead of focusing on the crazy, wacky nonsense, which is...
If only it was more like some other leagues around the world that are, ahead, getting with the times, and just let you hear everything the refs say during games normally.
Oh, if there was a feed where instead of listening to someone commenting on the game, especially now that Sam Rosen has left us, not because he's dead, just because he retired. He's fine. But I don't really need to hear commentary. I would love to just hear the refs and the linesmen the entire time while I'm watching hockey. I love listening to professionals talking amongst themselves without thinking or worrying about the expertise of non-professionals who might be listening to them. Your thing of the day was Balatro for the Nintendo e-reader.
Oh, right. So people might not remember the Nintendo e-reader, but in case for those who do or don't, what it was is basically a cartridge that you'd put into your Game Boy Advance.
It was huge.
And it was pretty big. And you could get cards, and the cards came from various places. Some were promotional, some you could buy, some you collected, anyway. But you would swipe, the cards had like basically data on them that was optically encoded, like barcodes, basically. And so you would swipe the card, sometimes all 4 edges of the card on both sides, depending on, right? And you would basically slowly, by swiping several barcodes into the e-reader, load more and more data into the cartridge's memory, and then the GBA would eventually have a cartridge worth of data, however much memory was in there, and the GBA would play whatever it was. So sometimes you could load some NES games. I think, Ice Climber, Mario Bros, Donkey Kong, they had cards for. But there are also some cards that you used to basically interact with other games. So like there was some Pokemon stuff and some, I think there was some Mega Man Battle Network stuff where like you'd play the game, and I don't know if you like switched to the e-reader and swipe, or I don't remember how it worked because I never did it. Or did you put the cartridge in the e-reader and also swipe? I didn't do it.
I mean, it was a technology that we didn't engage with for obvious reasons. This is a gimmick that went nowhere.
Yeah, we knew one person in college who had it, but I was like, yeah, not doing that, right? But anyway, the thing about the e-reader is like, hey, if you could print cards, you can theoretically make software for the GBA, and people at the time, I guess, didn't think of it, but people now think of it.
Yep.
And so somebody went ahead and made Balatro for the e-reader, a big demake of Balatro. It's very limited in its actual functionality. As long as you stay on the happy path, you'll be convinced it's the full game. But if you actually try to play for real, you'll realize, oh, this isn't really all of Balatro.
Yep.
It's just enough to make it seem like Balatro. And
but that is still fucking impressive.
Yeah, but they basically coded Balatro for the GBA, a really simplified demake version, and then encoded it to print on cards that you could then swipe in the e-reader to load rather than making a ROM. They could have just compiled a GBA ROM that you play in an emulator. But
that was the fun in that.
Yeah, and also doing it for the e-reader is like a bigger challenge because you have less to work with, So that's pretty awesome.
Yeah. All right, so in the news, we're not going to talk about everything going on here because there's a lot, and what I'm about to link to, I'm not even going to count how many links there are at the bottom of this page.
So we've talked already about Diamond Comics Distributors. We've been talking about them for years. They are a company kind of, that basically, because of history that you can study yourself, they dominated and had a monopoly on the distribution of comic books, but also various nerdy, merchandise in the United States and some other parts, and so if you basically, comic book stores in the U.S. were effectively buying things from Diamond almost exclusively and then selling them in their stores, right? And among other things, they published the previews catalog on a monthly basis, which basically is where you would order all nerdy things for a comic book store, or if you were a comic book buyer, you would get the catalog anyway, because then you would know what the comic book store could buy and tell them to go get it for you. And that's how things operated for decades. But they went out of business for various reasons, mostly Marvel and DC abandoning them. But they had an exclusive deal for a long time that basically had a stranglehold in the whole industry. Now they're dead. And in their death, there has been, they could have just died and just let the dust settle, but no, they had to die in the most dramatic fashion that is a continuously ongoing saga of, people buying them, not buying them, auctions, not winning the auction, all kinds of shenanigans. You can read, if you scroll to the bottom of the link, like Rim said, there's so many links, and there will be more links in the days to come, even though it's been already going on for months.
The most recent link they added at the bottom, Dynamite is owed $1 million by Diamond and can't make payroll next week.
Yeah, Dynamite is a mid-tier comic company that I'm not a huge fan of, really, of the things that they make, but it's still like, hey, that's kind of effed up, right? But the two big items I wanted to discuss about their bankruptcy, one of them is that whoever owns them now, there is inventory in the Diamond warehouse that is on consignment. And what that means is somebody published comics or made games or whatever, made merch, gave it to Diamond, put it in the Diamond warehouse, and the agreement is that when Diamond sells it to a comic book store, that at that point they will pay the publisher, the creator of those items, for those items, but the owner of the items is still the publisher. Still, Diamond doesn't own them. They're just warehousing them and distributing them. And so the people who own Diamond now are like, hey, can we sell all these consignment goods and like you give the money to the people who own our debt. And it's like, you mean steal them from the publishers who own them? No, it's like, what? It's completely out of control. The other news is that Paizo Publishing, right, which is a RPG company, right? They make various, like Pathfinders and things like of that nature, right? They've got stuff in Diamond, but they're not sending Diamond anything else. And so like this is messing up their like whole release shenanigans here, right? Even though this has been going on for so long. It's just one example of like, hey, all of our August and September shit is kind of, going to be messed up because of Diamond shenanigans. And this is just one, significant. It's not like the biggest company in the world, but Paizo is significant in the nerd world, right? And so them being messed up this much by this, and that is hitting basically all U.S. nerd companies and gaming, comic.
Yep, it's actually relatively rare that a company that is so crucial to such a wide supply chain of products and companies and things fails suddenly like this. Usually there's a long decline, or like someone buys them because the business is valuable. This is even from like business standpoint, this is a weirdly convoluted situation.
Yeah, but it's if you're a nerd in the United States or in a country where Diamond had controlled things, you should pay attention to this because it's somehow still going. Oh my God, why is it still going? They should be dead by now.
Will they be dead while Geek Nights still runs? Many things have appeared and disappeared over the span of Geek Nights. Diamond may be a thing that disappears during Geek Nights.
Well, we wanted to get rid of it for so long, and now it's like monkey's paw. But they deserve to die. They're bad, right? When they were around, so it's like it's not entirely bad that they're
no
dying.
monopolies, no rent seekers.
That's right.
So I got a little geek bite because, I was a fan of Rick and Morty and as a show, and the show was a pretty funny show with pros and cons, like good points, bad points early on. But the last season got, I would say, good, like actually good, not just comedy, getting increasingly interesting and serious and turning it sort of maturing as a show. And I will say, now that I've watched a good chunk of the new season 8, which is after, Roiland was booted from the show, the creative team is moving on without him. The show is really honestly focusing a lot more on what I would consider hard sci-fi and like proper science fiction stories instead of what a lot of people would say are just gags. The show's gotten really good. So my geek bite is simply, if you fell off that Rick and Morty train at some point in the past, but otherwise liked anything about the show, I would say as of now, the show is the best it has ever been. And it's on an upward...
I didn't even know it was still going.
Upward trajectory. Well, so what's interesting, if you Google around about Rick and Morty, you will find two different internets that don't intersect. Internet number one are mostly shitheads. These are the people who got mad when Rick and Morty made fun of its own fans for being weird and liking Rick. They were like, Rick's not to be emulated. Rick's the problem. The whole point of the show is that Rick is fucked up. What's wrong with you? It's like the people who watch Breaking Bad and they're like, I should break bad. That seems, Walter White's a cool guy. They watch The Matrix and they're like, oh, I'm all in with the agents. Like, let's go.
I think we could do several shows about that, but it's like you aesthetically in Star Wars, right? It's like Luke Skywalker is a derpy derp. And Darth Vader is cool as fuck, right? And so but he's the bad guy. You shouldn't be, murdering all kinds of people around the galaxy and fascisming. But the Emperor is also cool as fuck. And this is a common problem in nerdery, that aesthetically, bad guys are cool and good guys are herp to derp. But then when you look, and I'm going to stick with the Star Wars, you look at the newest Star Wars movies, the 3 sequels, 7, 8, 9, right? They made the bad guys herp to derp, right? And you know what? It's not any fun. It's like who cares about beating up these lame-o herp to derps?
Yeah.
It's like they almost so that
Andor actually brought that back around. Andor is like, what if you got to see all the scenes on the Death Star when the camera wasn't there and they're all just doing their fascism?
what you need to do, in my opinion, is to not do 5 episodes on this.
Yep.
You need to make the bad guys cool, competent, and evil. Right? You need to make the good guys also cool, perhaps even cooler. And then you need to make the bad guys get like fucking devastatingly owned in like such a satisfying justice of like, fuck yes.
You know what movie that did that really well?
That is the formula.
A movie that did that really well is Inglourious Bastards.
That's one. Yep.
Another
way is basically almost every Hitchcock movie.
Ooh, yeah.
There's a twist at the end, but the twist at the end is usually, the bad guys got owned.
Yep.
Right? and it's like you're worried the whole time, and it's like, nope, the good guys win at the end.
But so basically, there's a part of the internet where there's all these people who are like, oh, the show's terrible now, and they either complain that it's woke, or they're mad that Justin Roiland was kicked off unfairly. Yeah, and meanwhile, the rest of the creative crew is like, we didn't like any of you anyway. But people who have a critical eye are basically praising the show to the point that it's had some award-winning episodes recently. It's upping its game in a big way. It's worth revisiting. But anyway, things of the day. So this one might aid
of the day.
Proper things of the day, non-forgotten things of the day. So, I didn't really watch this show for a bunch of reasons, and actually I can say the reason right now. In the year 1994, which for some of you listeners was probably long before you were born, I was already so deep in being an anime weeb that I hit this period of not watching American animation or even like animation on TV at all. I was like only watching anime to the exclusion of everything else. But ReBoot was a TV show animated in Canada. Came out in the year 1994. It actually went for a pretty long time. That while I didn't really watch it, I was aware of it. Because
I watched it when I could, but it wasn't like, it was a very brief period where it was on at a consistent time during Saturday morning.
Oh, it was
cartoons.
This documentary gets into how hard it was to watch this show in America.
Right. It's like it did have a time slot that was somewhat consistent, but then eventually the episodes were repeating. And then at one point it skipped ahead and it had a serial plot and I couldn't follow it. And then it didn't air or it changed. And it's like, it was really hard in that era where, it wasn't on demand or anything. You had to know what time it was going to be on and sit in front of the TV at the right time and hope the right episodes were on in the right order. And I was never able to see it all. I just saw several scattered episodes and generally understood the plot, but I felt like there must have been an ending that I never got to. I don't know.
So there's a comic. There's a bunch of stuff that's come out. There's still a thread of ReBoot.
There is. There's a whole bunch, yeah.
But basically, not to get into the show. That's something we could talk about at a different time. But it was ahead of its time. But one of the ways it was ahead of its time is that if you look at it now, you're going to think, what the fuck are Ribbon Scout talking about? This looks terrible. You got to understand what technology was like in the year fucking 1994.
Yeah, it's like before Toy Story. Right?
Like movies still had to use practical effects.
Toy Story was like a year out, and Toy Story was a movie, and it had a lot more money, and was only an hour and change, or however long Toy Story is. This was a TV show that had a way less budget, and they had to make lots of episodes. That were way longer, right? to get them done faster.
This is what my thing of the day is a documentary. It's only 20 minutes long about how they made ReBoot, which is the most fascinating part because they had to solve really, really basic problems, and they pioneered having 3D animation or computer animation pipelines at all, as opposed to entirely bespoke like demo scene type stuff. They had to solve problems like how do you do version control on these huge assets in the year 1994. There's barely an internet.
At the time, there were some shows that might have had some computer-generated animation. For example, there was a BattleTech cartoon, and when they fought in the mechs, there was some really bad CG. But then the rest of the show was normal hand-drawn animation at the time, where this show was 100% computer animated in 1994, and it looked better than a PlayStation 1. Yeah. Right? It was better than a PlayStation 1. It wasn't as good as Toy Story, obviously.
Yep.
Not quite as good as a PS2, maybe, right?
But it also it did a bunch of other things. Like it had like you mentioned, a serial plot in a way that was very hard to get away with on television in the 90s. So yeah, it's a property worth revisiting. But my thing of the day, I recommend, even if you've never heard of the show, this documentary, you're gonna see what technology was like when we were young, and it blows my mind that when I was in middle school, some Canadian nerds were making this. So what's your thing of the day?
So even though it's Wednesday, I'm gonna do a gaming thing of the day because I saw this game and I'm like, oh shit. Right. So there's a lot of solo RPGs out there these days. Basically, choose your own adventure books, but with, a lot more your input and creativity going into it. And
higher concepts systems. In many ways, some of these things.
Right, and so I've got quite a few. Some of the ones I've got that basically the two I have already that I want to play are the very famous 1,000-year-old or 500-year-old vampire, the old vampire one, and I forget how many years it is. Right,
our friends who have played it bring high recommendations.
Yeah, and then the other one is You Are the Dungeon, where you are a dungeon. Yeah. It's like, but I saw this one and I'm like, oh man, this might be the best one I've seen. Like on that level of those others, and like I actually kind of want to play this right away.
I also kind of want to, having read it while preparing for the show.
So what it is a solo RPG. It's $5, and you are an assistant demon. Right, so Satan is your boss.
Yeah,
and your job is to run an item shop in Germany, in like a long time ago,
in
like
1541.
Yeah, and people come into your shop and you have to sell them cursed items, and you have to do a good enough job of it that Satan doesn't get mad at you because you've already done a poor job at it. And the name of the game is Caveat Emptor, Buyer Beware. But you're the seller. And yeah, I really want to play this, and I actually kind of wish there was somehow a multiplayer version of it. But
this would be a good RPG. Just like a full-on RPG. No, but like a full-on multiplayer RPG. Yeah. Inspired by Needful Things by Stephen King, which if you've never read any Stephen King, I'd actually recommend it. The Screwtape Letters by C.S. Lewis.
I'm just saying, is like, if you play a full-on fantasy RPG, there's going to be scenes where players go into a shop, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so you could think of this as, if you're like a GM in a normal fantasy RPG, as like you could practice for that by playing this, or you could just have fun playing this, which is what my plan is for $5. So,
you know what? I feel like let's both get it and play it, and then that's an easy review. All right, in the meta moment,
about 10 months old.
The GeekNights Book Club book. We will be doing the show on Thursday next week. We have some positive things, but also a lot of other things to say about this book. It's I think it's worth your read for a bunch of reasons, but it's so short.
It's short enough that I won't say don't read it.
Yeah, but I would say if you haven't read any of these Murderbot books and people are talking about it around you because of the show, read the first Murderbot book first, because it's so short. Like, you'll read it before you realize.
Books are so short, except for one of them, which is a full novel. But
Everything for Everyone, Oral History of the New York Commune, 2052 to 2072. We're going to talk about the fiefdoms in Queens and the stuff that happens in this book on Thursday. And then Scott will announce...
I have selected 2 further book club books, and one of them I'm halfway done reading. So there's a 50-50 chance... There's a 50% chance that I'll get away with one.
Then I'll have to read real quick.
And there's a 50% chance I'll have to read this other book.
I mean, if I ever get screwed in the book club, it's going to be Dumas versus Foucault. So
you won't be. This is not a screwing. It's just I started reading one of them because I'm like, oh, I finished the other book club book. Let me read one of these.
Yep. I've been reading a lot of nonfiction lately for a bunch of reasons, but I digress. Let's get to the main bit. So a while ago, Emily and I, because Emily's on the board of Asifa East, and just for a lot of reasons, we often go to see award screenings of animation. So, in New York City, there's a surprising number of like non-public, kind of hidden full movie theaters, like in the ground floors of kind of random skyscrapers, and companies will do screenings of films there, sometimes for the Academy, like for the Oscars, or for other reasons, test audiences, things like that. So in the same day, in the morning, we went and saw The Wild Robot, or it might have been, I forget the order. In the same day, we went to see The Wild Robot, and we had dinner, and then we went to see Flow. And both movies have some relations to them, especially considering what Scott thought the Wild Robot was before he saw it. I feel like Scott should have watched Flow.
Yeah, I'll watch it eventually.
Yeah, Flow is brilliant. There's a lot going on with Flow. But
Yeah,
we're gonna.
I saw the trailer for a Wild Robot. I forget when I saw it, and I was like, "Oh, that looks way good." Usually, I'm not a DreamWorks person, and we should talk about DreamWorks for a bit. But I was like, "Oh, that looks kind of good," and I'm like, "It's ripping off." The trailer, based on the trailer only, I'm like, it's a little bit ripping off WALL-E, only instead of space, a desert, whatever, it's in a jungle. But I'm like, other than that, I'm like, it still seems to have the right atmosphere. And the actual movie had an atmosphere that was not like the trailer, which is in some sense good, because I know a lot of people out there, people who believe in spoilers especially, but also others are mad when a trailer just gives you the whole movie. And this was not the case. But also, I was much more a fan of the mood in the trailer than the mood of the actual
Well, you thought it was going to be one of those high concept, no dialogue movies.
Exactly, right?
That's Flow. That's what Flow is.
Yeah, I know. But based on the trailer, that's what I thought it was going to be. And so I said, I'm definitely going to watch that one day based on the trailer. It convinced me. The advertisement worked on my brain. And I didn't watch it till it was on Netflix, which it is right now. You can just watch it on Netflix for no money. I guess part of your Netflix subscription money.
Yeah, I mean, well, I didn't see any trailer. I actually went into both of these movies blind. All I knew about Flow is it's about a cat, and it was...
That's what I know about Flow.
It was made entirely in Blender.
Made entirely in Blender. Yep. We talked about that. Yeah.
And it was Latvian, and that colored my expectations. The Wild Robot, all I knew is Chris Sanders, and I did know that it used an extension of the same animation pipeline that they used for the Bad Guys. I don't know if you ever saw that, which is actually really worth seeing.
Did not know. All right, so
and Puss in Boots too.
Oh, okay. This might be the first time we've ever discussed a DreamWorks work on GeekNights.
It might be.
Yeah. So I just want to say quickly, if people don't know the deal with DreamWorks, right? So Disney, back in the day, right? Their animation was kicking ass in the Snow White days, right? The old days. And then when you got into like 70s, 80s, it wasn't doing so great, right? And then what happened is this dude, you might have heard of him, Jeffrey Katzenberg, came along, and he was the one who was like, boom, Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, Lion King, boom, 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 money, money. Yeah, Disney is back. It's thanks to him, right? Largely. He takes a lot of the credit. Obviously, one person can't take all the credit for a huge animation studio, but he does deserve a significant amount of the credit. And then, long story short, Disney did him dirty, foolishly, and he said, fine, peace. And he went with Steven Spielberg and what's his name? There's a third DreamWorks founder. Let me click really quick so I can remember their name.
Oh, I got to scroll up. Yep.
Geffen, right? So he went with them, and he's like, all right, let's make a new thing, right? And they had plenty of money, so it wasn't a problem. And they made DreamWorks, and they came right out there with the Shrek, which the first thing they do is Shrek, which is a huge success commercially, even though I've never seen it, and lampoons Disney, right? So it's like that's the first thing they do.
Well, no, they did The Road to El Dorado.
Was it the first one? I don't know. I thought Shrek was the first thing.
All right, let me go down to oh, God. You know what the first thing they actually did was? Ants, which I never watched.
Oh, okay.
And Prince of Egypt, which is beautiful. The Road to El Dorado, which is, I haven't seen it in a long time, but it is underrated and funny. There's some stories behind it.
I've seen only some DreamWorks.
But no, I have never seen any Trek, and I have seen 1.5 Kung Fu Pandas just because they're on in the background in hotels.
I haven't seen a Kung Fu Panda. I haven't seen a trained dragon.
How to Train Your Dragon is fantastic. I don't know about the sequel, but the first one was good.
Yeah, I've seen very few, honestly, DreamWorks things, but some of them have been very successful, and some of them they've had varying success. I don't think that they've taken over the world the way that those Disney animations did, that Katzenberg did. But
I think part of the problem
they're still going where others have failed, right?
Oh, and actually,
you can even see that nowadays, that Pixar isn't doing so great nowadays, relatively speaking, right? But DreamWorks is I think perhaps doing better, maybe. Who knows?
Well, where they're getting a lot of attention was the newer Puss in Boots movie. Is similar to The Wild Robot. The animation pipeline they used is one of those sort of next step revolutionary pipelines that just looks really different, kind of like how the Spider-Verse pushed a bunch of limits of animation. Like, it's that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. They've really embraced.
The people who make Spider-Verse, I guess they should finish what they're doing, but it's like if they start they should make more other things. Right? That would be awesome.
Because another movie that's gone down that direction is the newer Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles one. Because the new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles one also had like a very, very strong animation aesthetic that stands out and is different. And I feel like animation is going through yet another like generational leap forward. And this is just a small part of it.
Yep. But anyway, so this is one of the newest DreamWorks films, The Wild Robot. And so what happens in this movie is it starts off much like the trailer, right? This robot, a very highly advanced, truly AI robot, falls off basically a container ship getting delivered somewhere, and it's on a deserted island. And it's on the deserted island. It's a robot. Now, I will admit, right at that moment in the beginning, and not the lightest of spoilers, my guess was there aren't humans anymore. And like human society is all gone and fucked, and this is like a post-human environment. I did start to think like, okay, there must be a story of this world, right? How do we get to this? Yep. What's going on?
I was very surprised by the humans are actually like right there, like next door, coupled with the humans are extremely stupid.
Yep. That they made robots smarter than themselves doesn't really make sense.
Well, I mean, that's literally the concept of the culture books.
Yep. Basically. So on the island, there are the robot doesn't really have a survival issue so much because it's a robot.
Yep.
But it encounters the animals that live on the island, right? And some of which are dangerous, and it takes damage from falling and various other things. And with its robot superior computational, not realistic abilities, it learns to speak to all the animals.
Yep, like it basically sits there and listens for some long amount of time. And then it starts trying to interact with the animals because it's got its prime directive is you are a servant to the first person who talks to you, basically.
Yeah. And it's like, if the robot can do this, how come humans don't already talk to animals via robot translation?
Well, actually, I think that's well explained considering how the movie ends, that the humans clearly do not interact with animals at all anymore, to the point that they kind of go nuclear war when they encounter a bird. Like the humans really do, like they are so, and I think there is some subtle storytelling layered in beneath the much more sort of direct kids movie side of this, in that I think that very much was intentional. Like the humans are so cut off from the natural world that they're terrified of like some ducks showing up. Mm-hmm. And they've abdicated so much to the robots that they're themselves kind of useless.
Mm-hmm. But anyway, the actual movie, sadly, in my opinion, is not the robot, despite it being the titular character and the focus from the beginning, is perhaps not the main character.
It's about an adopted kid and a neighborhood bully basically getting adopted by a robot and having a found family.
It becomes a cookie cutter kids movie plot. Like as
I wouldn't say it was cookie cutter. I think you overestimate
the stereotypical vanilla children's movie plot in period.
I think it was a little more than that. It was
they execute it basically exactly with no flaw, but that's what it is.
Those kinds of movies, I think, would have spent a lot less time in atmosphere and establishment. And those kinds of movies also really never do things like time skips or a secondary Square Boss style follow up. It's an advanced cookie, at least. But what I will say is, the voice acting is fantastic. The voice acting is
great too.
The animation is. I would actually say the animation is phenomenal in the sense that it is very painterly, like it's very stylistic, like in this really fun way. The action animation is like really well choreographed. It feels like it takes place in an actual 3D space. The animals all like move really well, and like all these pieces
also,
are just
the characters. A lot of the the animal characters are really fun. Right?
Yep. There's a laundry list of side characters that are kind of in the neighborhood, and every one of them is funny in their own way. And the movie, the thing that this movie does that a lot of kid movies don't do is it doesn't, like, when there is a joke, it doesn't like pause to make sure the kid gets the joke like some like more recent Disney movies will often do. It's just like, you just move on. You either caught it or you didn't. Just keep going. There's a lot of subtle humor in the dialogue or like the slight animation of the way characters react to each other. Like, it's all just very well done in that regard. And the plot does escalate a lot more than I thought it was going to escalate.
Yeah. I thought it was just going to be like, the sadness of whatever, but it's like, no, they do tie it back into where the robot came from and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, but I like how it does incorporate a lot of elements around, like, you've got this adopted kid who's weird because he's raised by a weird robot, and all the other,
and also is the runt of the litter.
Yeah.
There's the guilt storyline, which actually gets resolved before the end, right? They didn't let that become the main. It's like a side.
See, that's why I'm saying advanced cookie. In a proper cookie cutter kids movie, the guilt plot is the entire plot that is resolved in the final scene before the denouement.
It could have been. Yeah, they did. It was good that they were.
Anytime a movie has a straight plot, the kind of plot point that like the worst example, which doesn't happen in this movie really compared to other movies, is those two characters just didn't talk about something, and the entire plot is just because they misunderstand something obvious, and that's like the worst. This movie, when a plot like that starts to arise, it gets resolved relatively quickly. But the animation is what stands out the most. It is just, you don't see a lot of movies animated this well, and that's partly why I brought up the pipeline, because the bad guys pushed the limits of current stylized animation. And if you watch that movie, you'll notice they're starting to do really clever stuff, mixing 2D and 3D, using very different kinds of render pipelines, using those various systems like what Disney has, where the characters have all these little subtle movements that make them feel like more real and more natural in their environment. There's a lot to talk about there that I'm not really qualified to talk about.
I think that part of it, is just that, DreamWorks has done, since its creation, this one thing, and they do it a lot. Right? It's like some years that they're having 2 or even 3 movies come out. Right? It's like Pixar isn't that many, right? It's like the anime studio is not. So it's like, on the one hand, there's something to be said for the studios that do one thing over several years, and it's like a masterpiece, right? Like Hosoda comes out every few years, and right and such. But it's like, if you do quantity, even if you might sacrifice quality sometimes or do some for cash grabs like Trolls or whatever, right?
You're gonna build a fucking pipeline,
right? It's like you are still building technology, talent, skills that will help you and get your quality up, right? Because you did it so much, and also get more quality in less time. So.
Yep. Well, funnily enough, that's kind of ReBoot was a similar story. Their main product was building this pipeline to be able to make that kind of animation, and then investing in that pipeline, and that sort of becomes their thing of advancing that pipeline to be able to do different things with animation. all about like you've got Mark Hamill plays the bear, and you got Pedro Pascal plays the fox, and maybe it's just me, but that fox was specifically extremely funny.
Oh, the fox is the most rim character.
Oh yeah. But I also like
not just that it was a fox, but
but
I was like, oh, it's the Agla fox.
But another thing I really appreciate about this movie is that it does not shy away from death. Like
it doesn't. There is death. It doesn't shy away from it. But
the robot kills an animal like early on and like notices it, and like it doesn't like dwell on it. Like the camera doesn't even pan down, but like you see the robot react. And there's that scene toward the end in the ice storm where they dig up the one hole and like then they just fill the hole back in and walk away.
But there are like, I think it's like they rationed the death, right?
Of course.
Like,
I mean, it's still a kid's movie. You're not gonna, it's not Kill 'Em All Tamino here.
Right. It's like they wanted to put in the deaths that were important and keep it within the limits for the children's movie and whatever.
But they used it to highlight how the animals.
There were many situations where it's like that should have been some death, and they didn't because it's kids' movie.
But they used
the bear didn't eat anybody, even though the bear was totally eating all kinds of
so one bears primarily eat things like berries, but that aside,
the bear didn't even eat the fish, right? They stole the fish from the bear.
True. Well, so I would argue that was very intentional because the ration of death that was used in the movie fits into this theme around how the world is dangerous and like the animals. It's not in a typical kids movie. The scene with the snowstorm in the end, hooray! Now the animals all get along and nobody eats anyone anymore. And this movie really is more like outside of this tiny like animal UN, they're still going to be eating each other. Like it is still the cruel realities of an evil world, and it even highlights the point of sometimes a society like these animals do need a powerful external protector to sort of organize them or help them. Not everyone can defend themselves from everything. Like there's more subtle themes layered in here than a typical kids movie, and I think the thread of death was a big part of that.
But yeah, I wouldn't say, based on the trailer, I would have said, oh, this thing's going to be like incredible. But actually upon seeing it, I just say, it's very good if you got time or Netflix.
Or honestly, if you're
not watch it.
If you're a fan of animation, if nothing else, just to see the animation, this and the new Puss in Boots movie and the Bad Guys are, as of course also Spider-Verse and the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Yeah. These are all examples of like what is pushing the envelope of animation right now.
Yeah, but Spider-Verse is a movie like you must see, otherwise why live?
Spider-Verse is the rare perfect storm of no notes, no complaints other than I'd like to see more of it.
Yeah, whereas this is like if you can see it, why not? Otherwise, you don't need to go and put any effort into going out to see it.
Yeah, but if you want to see Pedro Pascal play a really funny fox who low-key actually keeps trying to eat the kid, this movie's worth seeing.